I want you to know that I believe character counts. I believe virtues and values. Look, there are a lot of candidates in this race, but the differences on policy between the Democrats are small compared to the gulf that exists between us and the current president in office. The way I keep telling people is, look, there's a lot of really good ideas. I am proud of the ideas we've brought into this campaign. But I'll tell you, I've learned a lot from every candidate. Yang has taught me some math, you know. This election is about a moral moment. We are in a moral moment. A moment that's testing the virtues of this nation. This is not a partisan moment. It's not about left or right. This is one of those moments in America. It's about right or wrong. I hear Republicans not showing the greatest profiles and courage who are willing to criticize the President of the United States to be in the Senate hallways, to understand that he is engaging in moral vandalism. So many of the common values of our country, how we greet the stranger, how we treat one another, whether we are a nation that works every generation to put more indivisible in this one nation under God, or do we divide ourselves against ourselves? Look, I'm here because when Mark came down to a diner in Newark, my mom has this saying. She says, "Who you are, speak so loudly, I can't hear what you said." He's one of those people whose spirit speaks, whose values are laid plain. That's what my life in politics has always been about. It's about understanding that the first most important thing before you start talking about policy is to look to a person's heart, look to their values, look to their virtue. And so I want to do two things right now. I want to make a case about how we're going to win this election and what's at stake. But the first case I want to make is just that about the core value of this country. Look, I'm a guy, I was the mayor of New Jersey's largest city, but I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in a community, small town called Harrington Park, Bergen County, New Jersey. And some people who are applauding from there because they're visiting from Bergen County. I told a story at the state fry about, we wouldn't have been able to move into the house I grew up in if it wasn't for a white couple that posed as my parents to get around the housing discrimination at the time. I'm here because of the activism of others. But then, knowing that people fought for my housing rights, I moved to Newark, New Jersey, to an inner-city, low-income, tough neighborhood to do what with my law degree? To fight for other people's housing rights. Because all of us here drank deeply from wells of freedom and liberty and opportunity that we didn't dig. We can't pay the blessings back of our ancestors who fought for us and struggled for us, and many died. We've got to pay it forward. So I became a tenants' rights activist and started representing people against really bad slumlords. And amazingly, the first person I met after the tenant president of the projects I would move into was this guy that actually, I'm not exaggerating, reminds me a lot of Mark. You know, he was a guy that was soft-spoken, who didn't have booming oratory. He was a guy who you could see his kindness in the eye. He ran the longest rent strikes in Newark's history. He was a humble man, but he did great things in service of others. He had that spirit of kindness and decency. And so I started working with this guy. I'll never forget the first tenant meeting we had. We ended up suing a slumlord who got convicted in federal court. And it was one of those meetings where there was a microphone up and everybody wanted to speak. By the second hour of the meeting, I had gotten all I needed to file a legal complaint. But people were just speaking and speaking and speaking, and I was getting antsy. But the whole time, every time a speaker came up, this guy, Frank Hutchins was his name, would look at that person as if they were the first person speaking of the night, with kindness in his eyes. And by the end of the night, everybody was speaking to him because the energy that he gave. He never said a word. Well, I remember complaining to Frank after the meeting, "Oh, what a long meeting." He goes, "Cory, you don't understand. We're not just here to fix the buildings, we're here to repair community. And everybody should have a right to be heard. Everybody should have a right to be validated and acknowledged. This is about creating a deeper, stronger bond. Because we'll take that slumlord down if we are more united and more connected. Well, I ended up getting this group of tenant activists. They were the ones that convinced me to get into politics. I'm in politics today because they pushed me to run for city council. I won a city council seat against the machine because they walked me through projects all throughout the city, knocked on doors, and the tenant leaders would just say, he's our guy. And we ended up winning. Well, Frank was old already, but by the time I was mayor of the city, he was getting very sick. And now when I would go visit him, he lost his eyesight. I would knock on the door, he'd open the door, and I'd be like, Frank, it's Cory, and he would dismiss me. I see you, even though he couldn't see. But this now became our greeting. Every time I would announce myself, Frank, it's Cory, he'd say, I see you. I took him out shopping. I would take him grocery shopping. Anywhere he wanted to go. He was royalty to me. But eventually he ended up in hospice. And he was in his last days. And I remember that I was upset. Because when I would go visit him in hospice, nobody else would be there. And I remember just getting upset. This is a guy that has kept thousands and thousands of human beings in their housing. Thousands of people, the roof over their head, heat and hot water. It should be packed here. But you see, that was my ego. Because to Frank, life was about purpose, not popularity. Life was about significance, not celebrity. Life was about how many people you showed up for when you were alive, not how many people showed up for you when you were dead. I'll never forget Frank's last day, the last day I saw him alive. I came in to see him in the hospice, and the nurses, and by the way, the healthcare professionals there, they're the most unsung heroes in our country. If you've ever been sick or ill, you see what these folks do every single day. Many of them are underpaid, understaffed. And they pulled me aside and said, it's not going to be long now. And I was very upset, and I walked into that room. They told me he couldn't speak anymore, and I walked into the room, and I knew this might be my last time, and I said, Frank, it's Cory. And I started walking over his bed, and then I see him struggling. And he was struggling to speak. He said, he forced these words out. I see you. I went to the side of his bed, and I held him, and I talked to him, and I told him how much he meant to me and to my life, that I wouldn't be the mayor of the largest city in the state if he hadn't have stood up for me and saw things in me that I didn't see myself. At the spot he was killed, they chose instead to write words from Scripture that are a challenge to us. They're like, okay, this is the spot King was killed, but anybody who walks past this spot and looks down, they're going to read a challenge. It gave me chills. This is the challenge of our era. It's the words that Joseph's brothers spoke when they saw him with a coat of many colors and they decided to kill him. Remember, they grabbed him, his brothers, and they threw him into a pit to die. But he didn't die in the pit. He rose on up and led a nation through crisis. Well, we are in a pit, inarguably right now. And so what did those folks at that time want to challenge us with? What did they write there at the point where Martin Luther King was slain?